Caps, caps, and more caps. Foresters go through a lot of caps because they work outside in the sun, and we just use a lot of caps. I think some people collect them. I don't really collect caps. I just go through them and have a lot. I don't throw them away. But while I was driving today, I thought I really need to clean out my closet, and this was the first thing I came to, and I thought I'd do a video. There's a lot of stories behind these caps, and at least I'll get to take one last look at them before I get rid of some of them. I'm going to jump right in. There's a lot of caps, and I'll go through them one by one. I hope you'll find this interesting. I drive a John Deere, and so this is the geekiest cap that I have. This looks the strangest sitting on my head, but anyway, I drive a John Deere, so I got a John Deere cap, and I do wear it. Here's a cap from a company that I did some work with, not for, but it's a company called Selfor, and they're out of Vancouver, British Columbia. They had an operation here in the southeast, and that's where I got associated with them. And I've worn that cap a good bit. Here's one that is fairly new. I'll hold on to this one. It's an agricultural seed company called Mixon. I think they're down in Orangeburg County. This is one that I got from a tour that I took of the Craven County Wood Energy Plant that's near New Bern, North Carolina. This is a plant. They burn about 500,000 tons of wood waste, and they produce about 45 megawatts of electricity. We're trying to get one of these plants down in South Carolina. This is a cap that is interesting. It's called raised floor living. You probably have not thought about it, but how many of your houses are built on slabs? They used to be on raised floors, or have raised floors, and there's a lot of advantages to raised floors. You can read about it here at raisedfloorliving.com. Here's a South Carolina company, and I'm sure I've toured this plant a couple of times. It's called Norboard. They make OSB, which is oriented strand board. It's a plywood substitute, and they're in Lawrence County, South Carolina. This is a company that I've done business with over the years. It's a camouflage hat, so you probably can't see the name, but it's Louisiana Forest Seed, and we buy a lot of seed from them that we grow in our nurseries. This cap has absolutely nothing to do with forestry. It's a Chapin band cap, and that's where my daughter went. She was in band for 1 or 2 years, I don't remember. I was a band parent. Only thing it has to do with forestry is that she played a woodwind. I have some nice looking caps. It's a little dirty, but this is my NC State Wolfpack cap. That's one of a couple that I have. I am a NC State Wolfpack, NC State graduate. This is another one that I have, NC State. I like both of these. They make some classy looking hats. This was at one time the nicest hat that I think I've ever owned. This is a corduroy material, but it's so old and I hated to throw it away, but it was given to me by an employee with Stone Paper Company. They had a paper mill in Florence, South Carolina. This has changed hands. Stone became Smurfit Stone, and now it's Rock 10. But I'll probably throw that hat away. It's falling apart. At one time, I tried to take up golf. I bought a tight lie club, some woods, but I am not a golfer, and so I've since given golf up and taken up other hobbies like guns and knives. I'm going to wait on this hat because there's a story to go with that one. Here's a hat. Foresters are big on competitions, all kinds of competitions from log rolling to splitting logs, different things. And I think I must have helped with a competition back in 1999. This is a hat that was given to me by a company called Georgia Pacific. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, but they had a program called Forest Map, and that was to help private landowners with managing their timberland. I think one time I worked with a group of people, foresters from all over the country, and we exchanged hats. And this one was given to me by someone with the Parks and Recreation Department in Vermont, evidently. I have absolutely no idea where this hat came from, but it's a good-looking hat, Superior Trees. This hat was a good-looking hat. This is my dress hat. I only wear it especially when I'm dressed up a little bit, but It's South Carolina Timber Producers Association, and that's an association of loggers here in the state. If it wasn't for loggers, there wouldn't be any forestry. This is one of the nicest looking hats I have also. I'm a member of the Society of American Foresters, and this is a really good looking hat that was given to me one time for speaking at a meeting. All right, let's see. Well, here's one back here. Getting down to the last few. This is a hat that was given to me by a chemical company, BASF. Chemical companies have always been good for giving foresters hats. Foresters use a lot of chemicals in site preparation before planting, and so this is a chemical. I actually don't think I ever used one-step herbicide. All right, we're down to the last three hats. This hat right here was for a company, Boise Cascade Corporation, out of Boise, Idaho, that I worked for. I worked for this company for probably about 10 years, from the late 70s through to the late 80s. And I worked in southeast timberlands. I worked in research for this company. We had about 500,000 acres of timberland that we managed. Now, while I was working for this company, or right at the end of my employment, I was notified that I was going to be let go. And I was given an opportunity to go work in Idaho just for a short period of time. Boise had 11 mills that were going on strike in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. They sent around a form to fill out what your skills were, and I really wanted to go because I knew I was going to be let go from the company, so it would extend my employment, and it was pretty good money. When you went to work on strike duty, you got paid your salary plus a hazard pay because you had to run the strike line. And all your expenses were paid during that period of time also. So it was good money. The irony of it was that Boise could fly people from all over the country in to run those mills, pay them hazard pay cheaper than they could with their union employees that normally ran the mill. But anyway, there was a question on the form. It was a piece of equipment, and they asked, could you run this piece of equipment? It was just one of the questions on the form. Well, I wanted to increase my chances of going on strike duty, so I checked off, yes, I could run that piece of equipment. I didn't actually even know what that piece of equipment was. And lo and behold, I got selected to go. They flew me out to Boise, Idaho. To make a long story short, we met in an auditorium in Boise, and the region manager called out everybody's name. Went down a list, and he would call out names and say, okay, you go over to that corner of the building. They'll take you by bus to such and such a mill in Oregon or Washington. And he got through. He said, okay, I think I've called out everybody's name. Let's go to work. Any questions? And I raised my hand because he had not called my name out yet. And he called on me. He said, yeah, what is it? And I said, well, you didn't call my name. So he asked me my name. I told him. He looked down the list and he said, you don't know how lucky we were to find you. You're the only employee in the whole country that checked off that you could run that piece of equipment. He said, my personal secretary is standing right over here. She's going to take you to where you're going to be working. So I went and got up with her, and needless to say, I was very nervous. But this is where she took me, to Emmett, Idaho. They had a power station there. It was a biomass power plant, and they shipped all their waste wood from 11 mills around Idaho, Washington, and Oregon to Emmett, Idaho, and they produced power, sold it to Idaho Power and Light, I believe the name of it was, or maybe Emmett Power Company. But anyway, I got out of the car, the secretary, I waved goodbye to her, she went around the corner. There were three of the largest front end loaders I've ever seen. One was being operated, and so I ran up to the guy, ran up to the piece of equipment, climbed up the ladder, knocked on the door to the cab, and the guy opened it, and I said, show me quick, how do you operate this thing? And I had worked on a farm growing up, so I figured if it could be run, I could run it. And it was easy to drive, no problem. Now, I had to operate it up on top of a mountain of wood chips. So it was challenging. But anyway, that was a real rewarding experience, and this is a hat I'll never throw away because it reminds me of that experience. I bought this last hat in Mexico while we were on a family vacation. It was the first time I had ever been to Mexico, and I'm not sure that I'll ever be back. So I wanted a keepsake to remember the trip. And I decided I wanted a hat, and I went in and talked to a lot of different merchants, tried to negotiate, tried to get a good deal. I finally bought the hat. I think I paid $15 for it. And when I got back home, lo and behold, the very first thing that I saw when I walked in a store in South Carolina was a supply of these hats, identical hats, for less than what I paid for them in Mexico. So I'm not as good a negotiator as I thought I was. Now, you may have guessed none of these hats are for sale. I named the video Caps for Sale because that's the name of a children's book that we used to read to our daughter when she was growing up. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Y'all have a good evening. Take care.